My parents forced me to become my dead brother and act as if I never existed. I haven't heard my real name spoken aloud in 8 months. Not once. When the school counselor calls me into her office today, she'll say, "Marcus, please have a seat," and I'll respond like I always do now, with a slight nod and the practiced smile that my brother used to give everyone. But my name isn't Marcus. My name is Dylan, and until March 15th of this year, I was a 17-year-old junior who played bass guitar, collected vintage postcards, and had never gotten higher than AB+ in calculus. Marcus was the one who aced AP calculus. Marcus was the one who played varsity lacrosse and dated Sarah Chen and got early acceptance to Northwestern. Marcus was also the one who died in a car accident 8 months ago, but according to my parents, Marcus is sitting in third period chemistry right now, taking notes on molecular bonds and pretending not to have a complete panic attack every time someone calls him by his dead brother's name. "You look just like him," Mom whispered to me the night before my first day at Westfield Prep, Marcus's school. She was holding his lacrosse jersey, number 23, and her hands were shaking. "Same height now, same build. Your hair is a little different, but..." She trailed off, then looked at me with eyes that were desperate and completely empty at the same time. "This is what we have to do, Dylan. This is the only way we can keep him alive." Except she didn't call me Dylan that night. That was the last time she used my real name. By morning, I had become Marcus permanently. The plan was insane, but grief does insane things to people. My parents had already withdrawn me from Jefferson High, telling the administrators that our family was relocating for work. Meanwhile, they informed Westfield Prep that Marcus had been recovering from his injuries and would be returning to finish his senior year. They had 8 months to set this up while I was supposedly being homeschooled. 8 months to doctor medical records, forge documents, and convince themselves that they could resurrect their perfect son by erasing their imperfect one. I should have run. I should have called the police, or my Aunt Rachel, or literally anyone with a functioning moral compass. But I was 17 and drowning in my own grief, and my parents were so completely shattered that I thought maybe, just maybe, this could help them heal. I thought it would be temporary, a few weeks, maybe a month, just until they came to their senses. That was 8 months ago. Now I sleep in Marcus's room, surrounded by his lacrosse trophies and college acceptance letters. I've memorized the names of his friends, his teachers, even his ex-girlfriend from sophomore year. I know that he was lactose intolerant but pretended not to be because he loved ice cream too much. I know he wanted to study engineering and that he was secretly afraid he wasn't smart enough for Northwestern. I know these things because I've been living his life, breathing his air, wearing his clothes, and slowly suffocating under the weight of being someone I'm not. The worst part isn't even the constant acting, the fear of being discovered, or the way I've started to forget what my own voice sounds like when I'm not trying to match his inflection. The worst part is that I never got to grieve my brother properly because I've been too busy becoming him. But today, that changes. Today, I'm going to tell Ms. Rodriguez, the school counselor, exactly who I really am. The hallway feels different when you're walking toward your own confession. Every step toward Ms. Rodriguez's office sounds too loud against the polished floors of Westfield Prep, and I catch myself unconsciously straightening my shoulders the way Marcus always did. Even now, 8 months deep in this psychological nightmare, his mannerisms have become muscle memory. "Marcus. Wait up." I freeze. It's Trevor Kim, Marcus's best friend since middle school, jogging toward me with his backpack slung over one shoulder. Trevor has been the hardest part of this whole charade, not because he's suspicious, but because he genuinely cares. About Marcus. About the person he thinks I am. "You okay, man? You look like you're about to face a firing squad," Trevor says, falling into step beside me. "Is this about the Northwestern thing again?" My stomach drops. "What Northwestern thing?" Trevor gives me a look that's equal parts confused and concerned. "Dude, the housing application. You said you were going to talk to Rodriguez about it today. The deadline's Friday, remember?" Of course. Marcus had been accepted to Northwestern for engineering. Marcus had plans, a future, a dorm room assignment that needed to be finalized. Marcus had a life that I've been puppeteering for 8 months, and now that life is demanding decisions I'm not qualified to make. "Right, I manage." "Yeah, just nervous about the housing thing." "You've been weird about college stuff lately," Trevor says, stopping outside Ms. Rodriguez's office. "Like, weirder than usual. Ever since you came back from your recovery or whatever." He makes air quotes, and something cold shoots through my chest. "What do you mean?" Trevor leans against the wall, studying my face with an intensity that makes me want to run. "I mean, you don't remember half the stuff we used to talk about. You forgot Sarah's birthday last month. You quit lacrosse, which, okay, maybe the accident spooked you, but you won't even watch games anymore. And don't get me started on how you suddenly suck at calculus." Each observation hits like a physical blow. I've been so focused on the big picture, maintaining Marcus's identity, keeping my parents from completely falling apart, that I've been sloppy with the details. The details that matter to people who actually knew my brother. "Sometimes trauma changes people," I say quietly, which is probably the most honest thing I've said to anyone at this school. "Yeah, but..." Trevor hesitates, then shakes his head. "Never mind. It's just good to have you back, even if you're different now. We thought we'd lost you forever." The irony is suffocating. They did lose him forever. And now they're about to lose the fake version too. "Trevor," I start, then stop. "How do you explain to someone that their best friend is dead and has been dead for 8 months, and you're actually his grieving younger brother who's been living a lie so elaborate it makes soap operas look realistic?" "What?" Ms. Rodriguez's door opens before I can answer. "Marcus. I'm ready for you now." She's holding a manila folder thick with papers, probably Marcus's college planning documents, scholarship applications, the whole roadmap of a future that belongs to a ghost. Trevor gives me an encouraging nod and heads down the hallway, and I'm left standing at the threshold between my brother's stolen life and whatever comes next. "Come on in," Ms. Rodriguez says warmly. "I know Northwestern housing can feel overwhelming, but we'll get it sorted out." I take a deep breath and step into her office, knowing that in the next few minutes, I'm either going to save myself or destroy everything. Ms. Rodriguez's office smells like vanilla candles and fresh coffee, a combination that should be comforting but instead makes my stomach churn. Her desk is covered with college brochures and acceptance letters, not just Marcus's, but dozens of other seniors planning their futures. Normal kids making normal decisions about normal lives they actually own. So, Northwestern housing, she says, settling into her chair and opening Marcus's file. I have to say, Marcus, your parents seem unusually invested in your dorm selection. Your mother called 3 times last week. My blood goes cold. She did. Very specific requirements. Single room, preferably in Bob Hall, meal plan level 3. Ms. Rodriguez flips through the papers. She mentioned you've been having some anxiety issues since your accident and might need the privacy to adjust. Which is completely understandable, of course. Of course Mom called. Of course she's planning Marcus's college experience down to the meal plan. She's probably already bought his textbooks, picked out his bedding, maybe even researched his professors. The realization hits me like a freight train. My parents aren't just making me live as Marcus for the rest of senior year. They're planning for me to be Marcus forever. Ms. Rodriguez, I start, but she's still talking, flipping through more papers. Your transcript is interesting though. Your junior year grades from Jefferson High are quite different from your earlier work here at Westfield. More B's and C's, especially in mathematics. She looks up at me with professional concern. Was the transition between schools difficult? Sometimes students struggle when switching academic environments. I stare at her. She has my real transcript. Dylan's transcript from Jefferson High, mixed in with Marcus's perfect Westfield prep record like some kind of academic Frankenstein monster. You have Marcus's records from Jefferson? I ask carefully. Well, yes. When you transferred back here from Jefferson, we needed your junior year coursework to ensure you'd meet graduation requirements. She pulls out a sheet of paper with Jefferson High letterhead. Though I have to say, it's unusual for a student to transfer away from Westfield for just 1 year and then come back. Your parents mentioned family circumstances. This is impossible. Marcus never went to Jefferson High. I did. Those are my grades, my transcripts, my junior year chemistry grade that I'm still embarrassed about. But somehow, my parents have convinced both schools that Marcus spent his junior year at Jefferson and is now returning to Westfield as a senior. The scope of their deception is staggering. They didn't just pull me out of school and forge a few documents. They've created an entirely fictional narrative where Marcus survived the accident, transferred to Jefferson High for his junior year, and is now returning to Westfield to graduate with his original class. They've written me out of existence so completely that even my own academic record has been absorbed into his identity. The math grades are concerning for someone planning to study engineering, Ms. Rodriguez continues. Have you considered switching majors? Your English and history grades are much stronger. Maybe journalism, or... I need to tell you something, I interrupt, my voice louder than intended. She stops mid-sentence, pen hovering over Marcus's file. Of course. What's on your mind? This is it. The moment I've been building toward for weeks. But looking at her desk, seeing the careful way she's organized Marcus's future, understanding the full extent of what my parents have done, it's so much bigger than I thought. They haven't just been keeping me hostage for 8 months. They've been planning this for years. The housing application, I say finally, chickening out. I'm not sure I want to go to Northwestern anymore. Ms. Rodriguez sets down her pen and gives me her full attention. That's a significant decision, Marcus. Can you tell me what's changed? The question hangs in the air between us, and I realize I have no idea how to answer it. What's changed? Everything. Nothing. Marcus wanted to study engineering at Northwestern, but Marcus is dead. I want to study music production, maybe audio engineering, but Dylan doesn't exist anymore according to every official document in the state of Illinois. I start, then stop, running my hand through hair that's been cut to match Marcus's length for 8 months now. I don't think I'm the same person who applied to Northwestern. Ms. Rodriguez nods sympathetically. Trauma can absolutely shift our perspectives and priorities. The car accident you experienced, that's life-changing. It's completely normal to reassess your goals afterward. She keeps saying, the car accident you experienced, and each time it feels like a knife twisting in my chest. I wasn't in a car. I was at home, practicing bass guitar in the garage, when Officer Martinez rang our doorbell at 11:47 p.m. on March 15th. I remember the exact time because I kept staring at the clock on the cable box, thinking maybe if I stared hard enough, I could make time go backward. What if, I say slowly, what if the person who applied to Northwestern wasn't who everyone thought he was? Ms. Rodriguez tilts her head slightly. What do you mean by that? My heart is hammering so hard I'm sure she can hear it. What if there was some kind of mistake? With the application, or the transcripts, or... I gesture vaguely at the file folder that contains the impossible fusion of my life and my brother's. Marcus, are you concerned about academic fraud? Her voice takes on a more serious tone. Because if there are discrepancies in your application materials, we need to address that immediately. Northwestern takes falsified documents very seriously. The irony would be hilarious if it weren't destroying my life. She's worried about academic fraud while sitting in front of the most elaborate identity fraud in the history of the Illinois public education system. Not fraud exactly, I say. More like, what if someone was pretending to be someone else? Like, what if the person sitting here right now wasn't actually the person on those transcripts? Ms. Rodriguez leans forward, her expression shifting from academic advisor to trained counselor. Marcus, are you experiencing dissociation? Sometimes after traumatic events, people can feel disconnected from themselves, like they're watching their life from outside their body. Something like that, I whisper. She opens her desk drawer and pulls out a small notebook. Have you talked to your parents about these feelings? Or considered seeing a therapist who specializes in trauma recovery? A bitter laugh escapes before I can stop it. My parents they're dealing with their own stuff right now. Of course. Losing a family member is incredibly difficult. She pauses, consulting Marcus's file again. I notice your emergency contacts list your parents and an Aunt Rachel Morrison. Would you be more comfortable talking to your aunt about these feelings? Aunt Rachel. My mom's sister, who lives in Portland and sends Christmas cards addressed to Dylan and Marcus Peterson every year. Who called 17 times in the first week after the accident before my parents stopped answering her calls entirely. Who has no idea that her nephew Dylan has been erased from existence while her other nephew Marcus has been resurrected from the dead. You have Aunt Rachel's contact information? I ask. Right here. Portland, Oregon. Phone number ending in 8847. Ms. Rodriguez looks up at me. Would you like me to give her a call? Sometimes an outside family perspective can be helpful when you're feeling lost. The number ending in 8847. I remember that number. I used to call Aunt Rachel every few months just to catch up, tell her about school, complain about my parents' latest attempts to make me more like Marcus. She was the only adult in my family who ever seemed to like me exactly as I was. What would you tell her? I ask. That you're struggling with some identity issues following your accident, and that you're reconsidering your college plans. That you could use some support from family members outside your immediate household. Identity issues. If only she knew. Ms. Rodriguez, I say, my voice barely above a whisper. What would you do if a student told you they weren't who everyone thought they were? Ms. Rodriguez sets down her pen completely and gives me the kind of look that counselors perfect in graduate school, patient, non-judgmental, but intensely focused. That's a very profound question, Marcus. Can you help me understand what you mean? My mouth goes dry. I've been practicing this conversation in my head for weeks, but now that I'm here, the words feel impossible to arrange in any logical order. How do you explain that your entire existence has been surgically removed and replaced with someone else's? Hypothetically, I say, gripping the arms of my chair. What if a student was living under the wrong name? Using someone else's identity? Are we talking about undocumented students? Because Westfield Prep has resources for. No, not immigration stuff. I take a shaky breath. What if someone was pretending to be their dead sibling? The silence that follows is deafening. Ms. Rodriguez doesn't move for at least 10 seconds, just studies my face with growing concern. When she finally speaks, her voice is very careful. Marcus, that's a very specific hypothetical scenario. Is there something you need to tell me? Before I can answer, there's a knock on her office door. We both turn as Mrs. Henderson, the front desk secretary, peeks her head in. I'm sorry to interrupt, but Marcus Peterson's mother is here. She says there's been a change in his Northwestern housing application and needs to speak with you both immediately. My blood turns to ice water. Mom is here. Right now. She must have gotten some kind of notification about my guidance appointment, or maybe Northwestern called about the housing deadline. Either way, this is a disaster. Should I send her in? Mrs. Henderson asks. Actually, Ms. Rodriguez says, still watching my face, could you ask Mrs. Peterson to wait in the outer office for just a few more minutes? Marcus and I are in the middle of something important. Mrs. Henderson nods and closes the door. Ms. Rodriguez immediately turns back to me, and her expression has shifted into full crisis intervention mode. Marcus, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Are you in some kind of danger? I can hear my mother's voice through the door, muffled, but unmistakably discussing Northwestern's engineering program with Mrs. Henderson. She's probably brought printed emails, highlighted housing catalogs, maybe even a backup meal plan application. She's been planning Marcus's college experience with the same obsessive attention to detail she used to plan his funeral. My name, I whisper, isn't Marcus Peterson. Ms. Rodriguez leans forward. What did you say? My name is Dylan Peterson. Marcus was my older brother. He died in a car accident 8 months ago on March 15th at 11:23 p.m. on Highway 94. The words tumble out in a rush. I'm 17, not 18. I'm a junior, not a senior. I play bass guitar, not lacrosse. Those transcripts from Jefferson High, those are mine. Those are Dylan's grades. I never went to Westfield Prep before this year. Ms. Rodriguez stares at me like I've just told her I'm from Mars. Marcus, I think you might be having some kind of dissociative episode. Check the obituary, I interrupt desperately. Marcus James Peterson, died March 15th, survived by his parents Robert and Linda Peterson and his younger brother Dylan. Check the accident report. Check the funeral home records. Check anything. Through the door, Mom's voice gets louder. She's asking Mrs. Henderson about my academic performance, whether I've seemed unstable lately, if I've mentioned anything about changing my college plans. My parents, I continue, the words pouring out faster now, they couldn't handle losing Marcus. So they made me become him instead. They withdrew me from Jefferson High, told everyone I was being homeschooled, and then enrolled me here as Marcus returning from injury recovery. They've been making me live his life for 8 months. Ms. Rodriguez reaches for her phone. Marcus, I'm going to call the school nurse. I think you're having some kind of psychological break. Call my Aunt Rachel, I say urgently. Call her right now. Ask her about Dylan Peterson. Ask her why my parents stopped taking her calls after Marcus died. She's the only person left who knows I exist. The door handle turns. The door opens before Ms. Rodriguez can respond to my plea about Aunt Rachel, and my mother walks in with the kind of bright, controlled smile she's perfected over the past 8 months. She's carrying a leather portfolio and wearing her navy blazer, the one she reserves for important meetings like parent-teacher conferences and funeral arrangements. Marcus, sweetheart, there you are. Her voice has that artificial cheerfulness that makes my skin crawl. Ms. Rodriguez, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but Northwestern sent an urgent email about housing deadlines. Ms. Rodriguez slowly sets down her phone, her eyes darting between my mother and me. I can see the wheels turning in her head, trying to process what I just told her while maintaining professional composure. Mrs. Peterson, actually, Marcus and I were just discussing the housing situation. Yes, I know. Mom moves into the room like she owns it, settling into the chair next to me without waiting for an invitation. I've been monitoring his email account to make sure we don't miss any important deadlines. College transitions can be so overwhelming for students who've experienced trauma. She reaches over and squeezes my shoulder, and I have to fight every instinct not to flinch away. Her grip is just a little too tight, her fingernails pressing through my shirt in a way that feels more like a warning than comfort. Marcus was just telling me about some concerns he's having, Ms. Rodriguez says carefully. About his identity and college plans. Oh, that. Mom waves a dismissive hand. He's been having some confusion lately. The accident affected his memory more than we initially realized. Sometimes he thinks he's someone else entirely, his younger brother who died, actually. It's been very difficult for our family. My blood goes cold. She's flipped the entire script. In her version, Dylan is the one who died, and Marcus is the one suffering from trauma-induced delusions. She's been planning for this possibility. I'm not confused, I say, but my voice comes out weak and shaky. I know exactly who I am. Of course you do, sweetie. Mom's smile never wavers. You're Marcus Peterson, my brave boy who survived a terrible accident and is working so hard to recover. She turns to Ms. Rodriguez. The doctors warned us that he might experience identity confusion. Survivor's guilt can manifest in very complex ways. Ms. Rodriguez is looking at me with growing concern, but now it's the wrong kind of concern. I can see her mentally reframing everything I just told her, not as a revelation of abuse, but as the delusions of a traumatized teenager who thinks he's his dead brother. The transcripts from Jefferson High, I say desperately. Those are Dylan's grades, not Marcus's. Marcus never went to Jefferson. Marcus, honey, you went to Jefferson for your junior year after the accident. We thought a change of environment might help with your recovery, remember? Mom's voice is patient, like she's explaining something to a confused child. Your grades suffered because you were dealing with so much grief and confusion. She opens her portfolio and pulls out a manila folder. I brought his medical records from Dr. Reeves, his trauma counselor. Everything is documented, the identity confusion, the false memories, the survivor's guilt that makes him believe he's actually Dylan. My hands are shaking. She has medical records. She's created an entire paper trail to support this version of events. How long has she been planning this contingency? Mrs. Peterson, Ms. Rodriguez says slowly, these are very serious allegations Marcus is making about identity fraud and... They're not allegations, they're symptoms. Mom interrupts, pulling out what looks like a psychiatric evaluation. Dr. Reeves has been treating him for 8 months. Marcus has been experiencing what's called dissociative identity episodes where he genuinely believes he's his deceased brother. It's heartbreaking, really. She looks at me with eyes that are simultaneously loving and threatening. The important thing is maintaining his stability while he heals. Any disruption to his routine, any validation of these false memories, could cause a serious setback. Ms. Rodriguez takes the medical records, scanning them quickly. I catch a glimpse of official letterhead, professional signatures, detailed psychological evaluations that paint me as a delusional trauma victim who needs careful management rather than rescue. The housing deadline, Mom continues smoothly, is causing him extra stress. He's afraid of moving forward with his life because part of him still believes he's someone else. But Marcus has worked so hard to get into Northwestern. We can't let his trauma derail his future. I watch Ms. Rodriguez reading through the fake medical records, see the exact moment her expression shifts from concern for an abuse victim to sympathy for a mentally ill student. My mother has outmaneuvered me completely. Call Aunt Rachel, I whisper one more time. Please. Just call her and ask about Dylan Peterson. Mom's grip on my shoulder tightens. Marcus, Aunt Rachel is still grieving Dylan's death. We've asked her not to contact us because it triggers your episodes. The last thing she needs is a phone call from the school asking about your delusions. Even Aunt Rachel has been neutralized. My mother has thought of everything. Ms. Rodriguez closes the medical file and looks at me with the kind of gentle pity reserved for broken things. Marcus, these episodes Dr. Reeves describes, how often are you experiencing them? I want to scream. I want to flip her desk over and demand she call the police, the FBI, anyone who might listen. Instead, I sit frozen while my mother orchestrates my psychological assassination with surgical precision. They've been getting worse lately, Mom says before I can answer. Especially when he's stressed about college. Yesterday he spent an hour insisting that his bass guitar, Dylan's bass guitar, belonged to him. He was so convinced that I had to hide it in the attic. My bass guitar. My Fender jazz bass that I bought with 2 summers worth of lawn mowing money. She's been telling people it belonged to Dylan, the dead brother, when Dylan is me and Marcus never touched an instrument in his life. I need to see the death certificate, I say suddenly. If Dylan Peterson died in March, there should be a death certificate. Show her Dylan's death certificate. Mom doesn't even hesitate. She reaches into her portfolio and pulls out an official-looking document with Cook County letterhead. I keep it with his medical records because sometimes seeing it helps ground him in reality. She hands it to Ms. Rodriguez, and my world tilts sideways. It's a death certificate for Dylan James Peterson, dated March 15, age 16, cause of death listed as motor vehicle accident. My own death certificate, signed and notarized and completely authentic looking. That's impossible, I breathe. I'm not dead. I'm sitting right here. Sweetheart, Dylan was in the car with you that night, Mom says softly. You've blocked out the memory because it's too painful. Dr. Reeves says that's why you've taken on his identity. It's easier than accepting that you survived and he didn't. Ms. Rodriguez is studying the death certificate, and I can see her buying every word. The document looks real because knowing my mother, it probably is real in every system that matters. She's had 8 months and unlimited resources to make Dylan Peterson officially dead while keeping Marcus Peterson alive on paper. The school records, I try again. Dylan Peterson was enrolled at Jefferson High. There should be withdrawal records, transcripts. All transferred to Marcus's file when we consolidated his academic records, Mom interrupts smoothly. Dr. Reeves suggested maintaining continuity in his educational experience to avoid triggering more episodes. She's covered everything. Every document, every record, every trace of my existence has been systematically transferred to Marcus's identity or erased entirely. I'm watching my mother gaslight me in real time with the backing of forged medical records and fabricated death certificates. Marcus, Ms. Rodriguez says gently, I think we should focus on getting you through the rest of senior year. These identity episodes seem very distressing. Are you taking medication for them? Risperidone, 2 milligrams twice daily, Mom answers immediately. Though we've been discussing adjusting the dosage with Dr. Reeves. The episodes are becoming more frequent. Risperidone. An antipsychotic medication. She's even researched the proper drugs to make her story believable. I wonder if she's actually been slipping them into my food, which would explain why I've been feeling foggy and disconnected lately. I want to call Northwestern myself, I say desperately. I want to tell them that I'm not enrolling. Marcus, you're not thinking clearly right now. Mom's voice takes on a sharper edge. We'll discuss college decisions at home, with Dr. Reeves present. Ms. Rodriguez nods approvingly. That sounds like the right approach. Mrs. Peterson, should I be concerned about Marcus being in classes today? If he's having a significant episode, he'll be fine as long as no one validates the delusions. The key is maintaining normal routines while redirecting him back to reality when necessary. Normal routines. Like living someone else's life, sleeping in someone else's room, answering to someone else's name. My mother has weaponized mental health terminology to make my abuse sound like treatment. The bell rings for fourth period, and students flood the hallway outside Ms. Rodriguez's office. Through the window, I can see Trevor Kim waiting by his locker, probably wondering why I missed chemistry class. Trevor, who thinks his best friend survived a car accident when really his best friend is buried in Oakwood Cemetery under a headstone that reads, beloved son and brother. I should get Marcus to his next class, Mom says, standing and collecting her portfolio of lies. Thank you so much for your patience with this situation. It means everything to have the school's support during his recovery. She's dismissing me like I'm a child having a tantrum instead of a teenager exposing a massive criminal conspiracy. And it's working. Ms. Rodriguez stands up with the fake medical record still in her hands, but something in her expression stops my mother mid-victory. Mrs. Peterson, I do have one procedural question before you go. Mom pauses in the doorway, her portfolio clutched against her chest. Of course. When Marcus transferred back from Jefferson High, we required his complete academic transcript for graduation verification. But I'm looking at these medical records from Dr. Reeves, and they indicate Marcus has been in intensive therapy since March 15th, the same date listed on this death certificate for Dylan. Ms. Rodriguez flips through the papers. Yet our records show Marcus completing a full junior year at Jefferson High through June. How was he attending classes while receiving intensive psychiatric treatment? My heart stops. She's found an inconsistency in my mother's perfect lie. Mom's smile falters for just a fraction of a second. The treatment was integrated with his schoolwork. Dr. Reeves believed maintaining academic structure was crucial for his recovery. I see. Ms. Rodriguez sits back down and opens her computer. And Dr. Reeves practices where? I'd like to coordinate with his office regarding Marcus's ongoing educational needs. That's not necessary. Actually, it is. State law requires documentation from treating physicians when a student has ongoing psychological episodes that affect their academic performance. Her fingers hover over the keyboard. Could you spell Dr. Reeves' practice name for me? I'll need to send his office Marcus's current grades and attendance records. The silence stretches between them like a loaded weapon. I can see my mother calculating, trying to figure out if Dr. Reeves exists somewhere in her web of lies or if she just made up the name on the spot. Reeves Psychological Services, Mom says finally. Downtown Chicago. Ms. Rodriguez types something, waits, then frowns. I'm not finding a Dr. Reeves in Chicago who specializes in trauma therapy. Could you provide his full name and address? Dr. Jonathan Reeves, Mom says quickly. He's very exclusive. Most of his clients are referred through Northwestern Memorial Hospital. But I can see the cracks forming in her composure. Her left hand is gripping the door frame so tightly her knuckles are white, and she keeps glancing at me like she's calculating whether to grab me and run. Ms. Rodriguez picks up her phone. I'll call Northwestern Memorial's psychiatry department. They should have his contact information on file. That won't be necessary, Mom says, but her voice has lost its smooth confidence. Perhaps we should continue this conversation another time. Marcus needs to get to class. Actually, Mrs. Peterson, I think Marcus should stay here while I make some phone calls. Ms. Rodriguez's tone has shifted from sympathetic to professionally suspicious. These medical records raise several questions that need immediate clarification. My mother looks at me, and for the first time in 8 months, I see something other than controlled manipulation in her eyes. I see panic. Dr. Reeves is very private, she tries again. He doesn't typically accept calls from schools. Then perhaps you could call him yourself and ask him to contact me directly. Ms. Rodriguez suggests. I'm sure he'd want to ensure Marcus is receiving proper support during school hours. Mom's portfolio slips from her hands, scattering fake medical records across Ms. Rodriguez's office floor. The death certificate lands face up near my feet, Dylan James Peterson, deceased, the official document declaring my own non-existence. But as Mom scrambles to collect the papers, I notice something that makes my breath catch. The death certificate is signed by Dr. Patricia Hendricks, Cook County Medical Examiner. But I remember Dr. Hendricks from the news. She retired in February, 3 weeks before Marcus's accident. My mother forged my death certificate using the signature of a medical examiner who was no longer in office. The scattered papers on Ms. Rodriguez's floor might as well be evidence at a crime scene. As Mom frantically tries to gather them, I catch another glimpse of that death certificate, and my heart starts racing for a different reason. There's something else wrong with it, something beyond the retired medical examiner's signature. Mrs. Peterson, MS. Rodriguez says, her voice now completely professional and cold, I need you to leave Marcus here while I contact the appropriate authorities to verify these documents. Absolutely not. Mom's mask has completely slipped now. Gone is the concerned mother act, replaced by something desperate and dangerous. Marcus is my son, and I'm taking him home immediately. She grabs my arm, but I don't move. For the first time in 8 months, someone in authority is questioning her story, and I'm not about to waste this chance. Ms. Rodriguez, I say quickly, the death certificate is wrong about more than just the signature. Look at the time of death. Mom's grip on my arm tightens painfully. Marcus, stop this right now. But Ms. Rodriguez is already studying the document. Time of death listed as 11:23 p.m., she reads aloud. The police report said Marcus died at 11:47 p.m., I continue, the details burned into my memory from months of my parents' whispered conversations. I remember because Dad kept saying if the ambulance had arrived 24 minutes earlier, maybe Marcus would have lived. You're confused about the timeline, Mom snaps, but sweat is beading on her forehead. The trauma has affected your memory. Then there's the location. I pull my arm free from her grasp. The death certificate says the accident happened on Highway 94, but Marcus crashed on Route 53. I know because I heard Dad on the phone with the insurance company arguing about which towing company had jurisdiction. Ms. Rodriguez sets down the death certificate and reaches for her computer mouse. I'm calling the Cook County Medical Examiner's office right now. Please don't, Mom says, and her voice breaks completely. Please. You don't understand what this will do to our family. For a moment, she looks exactly like what she is, a mother who lost her child and made catastrophically bad decisions in her grief. But then I remember 8 months of sleeping in a dead boy's room, 8 months of answering to a name that isn't mine, 8 months of my own existence being systematically erased. What about what this has done to me? I ask quietly. Did you ever think about that, Mom? She stares at me, and I see the exact moment she realizes she's lost control of the narrative. Her shoulders slump, and suddenly she looks 10 years older. You look so much like him, she whispers. Especially when you're angry. Marcus used to get that same expression when he thought we were being unfair. I'm not Marcus, I say, and for the first time in months, saying those words doesn't make me feel guilty. I'm Dylan. I'm your other son. The one who's still alive. Ms. Rodriguez has her phone in her hand, but she hasn't dialed yet. Mrs. Peterson, I need you to explain to me exactly what's been happening here. The truth this time. Mom looks between us, calculating one last time whether she can salvage this situation. Then she sinks into her chair and covers her face with her hands. The funeral director asked us what we wanted on Dylan's headstone, she says, her voice muffled. And I realized I didn't want Dylan to be dead. I wanted Marcus to be alive. The admission hangs in the air like a confession. Ms. Rodriguez slowly sets down her phone. Mrs. Peterson, are you telling me that Dylan Peterson is alive, and Marcus Peterson is deceased? Mom nods without looking up. And you've been forcing Dylan to impersonate his dead brother for 8 months? Another nod. I should feel vindicated, but instead I just feel empty. Finally hearing the truth out loud doesn't fix anything. It just confirms that my mother chose grief over reality, and I've been paying the price ever since. I'm calling Child Protective Services, Ms. Rodriguez says quietly. And then we're calling your Aunt Rachel. The words, Child Protective Services, seem to snap my mother back to reality. She jerks upright in her chair, her eyes going wide with genuine terror. No, please. You can't, she turns to me desperately. Dylan, tell her this was just temporary. Tell her we were going to fix this after graduation. But that's the thing about living a lie for 8 months, you start to see the truth in sharp relief. Were we, Mom? Because you filled out Northwestern housing applications. You called the admissions office 3 times last week about orientation schedules. You bought Marcus a laptop for his dorm room. Ms. Rodriguez is already dialing, but she pauses. Dylan, did your parents make any preparations for you to reclaim your identity after graduation? I think about the laptop sitting in Marcus's closet, still in its box, with Marcus Peterson, Northwestern University class of 2024, written on the shipping label in Mom's careful handwriting. I think about the fake medical records that paint me as permanently delusional. I think about my own death certificate, filed somewhere in Cook County's official records. She wasn't planning to fix this, I say quietly. She was planning to make it permanent. That's not true, Mom protests, but her voice lacks conviction. We just needed time to figure out how to. How to what? Resurrect Dylan from the dead. I stand up, and for the first time in months, I feel like myself again. Do you have any idea what you've done to me? I don't legally exist anymore. Dylan Peterson is officially deceased. My social security number, my birth certificate, my entire identity, what happens to all of that? Ms. Rodriguez finishes dialing and puts the phone to her ear. Yes, I need to report a case of identity theft and psychological abuse of a minor. No, this is not a typical situation. While she explains our impossible circumstances to the CPS intake worker, Mom grabs my hands across the desk. Her palms are cold and trembling. Sweetheart, I know this seems extreme, but you have to understand, we lost everything when Marcus died. Our perfect son, our hopes, our future. You were grieving too, but you still had your whole life ahead of you. Marcus's life was just gone. So you decided to steal mine instead. I pull my hands away. Mom, I had a life. I had friends at Jefferson High, I had plans, I had dreams that weren't Marcus's dreams. Did you ever think maybe I didn't want to study engineering? Maybe I didn't want to go to Northwestern. Maybe I wanted to be Dylan Peterson instead of your replacement Marcus. The office door opens and Principal Walsh walks in, his face grim. Behind him is someone I don't recognize, a woman in a navy blazer carrying an official-looking briefcase. Ms. Rodriguez, this is Sarah Chen from the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services. She was already in the building for another case when your call came through. Sarah Chen. The same name as Marcus's ex-girlfriend, but this Sarah is older, probably in her 30s, with the no-nonsense expression of someone who's seen every form of family dysfunction imaginable. Mrs. Peterson, Sarah says, consulting her notes, I understand there's been some confusion about your son's identity. Mom laughs bitterly. Confusion. That's one way to put it. Sarah sits down and opens her briefcase, pulling out forms and a digital recorder. I'm going to need statements from both of you. Dylan, let's start with you. Can you tell me your full legal name and date of birth? Dylan James Peterson, I say, and hearing my real name spoken aloud in an official context makes my throat tight. Born June 14, 2006. Marcus was Dylan James Peterson, born September 3, 2004. He died March 15 of this year at 11:47 p.m. on Route 53. Sarah types notes into her tablet. And Marcus, your brother, he was 18 when he died. 17, I correct. He would have turned 18 in September. That's why Mom had to forge so many documents. Marcus was still a minor when he died, but she needed him to be 18 for college applications. Ms. Rodriguez looks up from her computer where she's been researching something. Dylan, I found Jefferson High's enrollment records. According to their system, Dylan Peterson was marked as transferred, family relocation, in March. But there's a note here that your transcripts were requested by Westfield Prep in August, along with a death certificate. Jefferson High thinks I transferred, I realize. Westfield Prep thinks Marcus transferred back from Jefferson after recovering from his injuries. Neither school knows there was a death. Sarah stops typing. So both schools have records showing both boys as alive and enrolled at different times. Mom finally speaks up. We told Jefferson that Dylan was moving out of state with relatives after Marcus's death. We told Westfield that Marcus had been homeschooled during his recovery and was ready to return for senior year. But the transcripts, Ms. Rodriguez continues, show Dylan Peterson completing junior year at Jefferson High in June, 3 months after Marcus Peterson allegedly died in March. How do you explain that timeline discrepancy? The silence stretches on for nearly 30 seconds before Mom answers. Dylan finished the school year at Jefferson. We didn't start the transition until summer. What transition? Sarah asks sharply. Mom looks at me like she's asking permission to confess, but I'm done protecting her from the consequences of her choices. Tell her about the haircut, I say. Tell her about the contact lenses to change my eye color. Tell her about the weight training program to match Marcus's build. Tell her about the speech coach you hired to help me match his voice patterns. Sarah's pen stops moving entirely. Mrs. Peterson, you hired professionals to help your son impersonate his deceased brother. They didn't know what it was for, Mom says quickly. We told the speech coach Dylan was preparing for a school play about Marcus's life. The trainer thought Dylan wanted to honor his brother's athletic achievements. And the contact lenses? The haircut? Dylan wanted to look more like Marcus. To feel closer to him. Another lie, but this one is so casual, so automatic, that I realize my mother has been rewriting reality for so long she might actually believe some of her own story. Sarah closes her tablet and looks directly at me. Dylan, I need you to understand that this situation is going to require extensive legal intervention. Your official identity will need to be restored, which means coordinating with multiple state agencies. Are you prepared for that process? I think about Aunt Rachel in Portland, who probably thinks I'm dead. I think about my friends at Jefferson High, who probably think I moved away and forgot about them. I think about Trevor Kim and Marcus's other friends here at Westfield, who are about to learn their friend has been dead for 8 months. Yes, I say. I'm ready to be Dylan Peterson again. Sarah Chin opens a manila folder and pulls out several official-looking forms. Dylan, before we proceed with identity restoration, I need to verify some basic information. This process could take weeks or even months, depending on how extensively your records have been altered. My stomach drops. Months? Your mother has essentially created a parallel legal existence for Marcus while simultaneously declaring Dylan deceased. We'll need to coordinate with the Social Security Administration, the Department of Vital Records, the IRS, and both school districts. Sarah's pen taps against her tablet. The fake death certificate alone constitutes multiple felonies. Mom flinches at the word felonies, but doesn't speak. There's something else, Ms. Rodriguez says, still staring at her computer screen. Dylan, I've been looking at Marcus's college application timeline. Northwestern received his completed application on January 15th, but the accompanying essay was submitted on March 20th, 5 days after Marcus died. I feel like the floor just dropped out from under me. March 20th. The essay topic was Overcoming Personal Tragedy. It's a beautifully written piece about surviving a car accident that killed your younger brother and learning to live with survivor's guilt. Ms. Rodriguez turns her monitor so we can see it. It's signed Marcus Peterson and dated March 18th. Sarah leans forward to read the screen. Mrs. Peterson, you had Dylan write college application essays as Marcus while pretending Dylan was dead. The application deadline had passed, Mom says weakly. But Northwestern said they'd accept a late personal statement if there were extenuating circumstances. The accident qualified as extenuating circumstances. I stare at the essay on the screen, my own words, describing my own grief, but written from Marcus's perspective about mourning me. I remember writing it during the second week after the funeral, when Mom said it would help me process my feelings about losing Marcus. I thought it was therapy homework. Instead, she was using my grief as Marcus's college admission ticket. You made me write about my own death, I whisper. I wrote Marcus's college essay about how sad he was that Dylan died. It helped you heal, Mom insists. Dr. Patterson said journaling would. Who's Dr. Patterson? Sarah interrupts. I thought you said Dylan was seeing Dr. Reeves. Mom's face goes white. Dr. Patterson that was before Dr. Reeves. Dylan saw several therapists in the beginning. Mrs. Peterson, Sarah's voice takes on a warning tone, I strongly advise you to stop fabricating medical professionals. Every lie you tell makes this legal situation worse for everyone involved. Ms. Rodriguez pulls up another screen. There are more essays here. Marcus's entire Northwestern application portfolio was submitted between March 16th and March 25th. All of it written after his death date. How many essays did you make me write? I ask Mom, but I'm starting to remember. Week after week of therapeutic writing exercises that were actually college application materials. Personal statements for Northwestern, scholarship applications, even housing preference forms. Dylan, according to this, Marcus applied for the bereaved sibling scholarship through the National Center for Grieving Families. Ms. Rodriguez continues reading. The application essay describes losing his younger brother Dylan in the same car accident that injured Marcus. Sarah stops taking notes entirely. There's a scholarship for grieving siblings that you applied for using Dylan's grief about Marcus's death, while pretending Dylan was dead. The scholarship was for $15,000, Mom says defensively. It would have helped with tuition costs. You monetized my grief, I say, and the words come out hollow and strange. You turned my pain about losing Marcus into scholarship money for fake Marcus. The office falls silent except for the sound of Sarah's pen scratching across her forms. Finally, she looks up and addresses Mom directly. Mrs. Peterson, I'm placing Dylan in emergency protective custody while we sort out his legal identity. This level of psychological manipulation and document fraud requires immediate intervention. You can't take him from me, Mom says, panic creeping back into her voice. He's all I have left. Ma'am, according to your own fabricated documents, Dylan Peterson is deceased. Technically, I'm not taking anyone from you. The words hit like a physical blow. According to your own fabricated documents, Dylan Peterson is deceased. Sarah's matter-of-fact delivery makes it even worse. I'm legally dead, sitting in a guidance counselor's office, listening to strangers discuss my custody like I'm a ghost that somehow became corporeal. Wait, I say, my voice cracking. What does that actually mean? If Dylan Peterson is officially dead, then who am I right now? What name goes on the protective custody paperwork? Sarah frowns and flips through her forms. That's actually a significant procedural problem. I can't place a deceased person in protective custody, but I also can't use Marcus Peterson's identity because that would be participating in the fraud. Ms. Rodriguez looks up from her computer. It gets worse. Dylan, I'm looking at your Social Security earnings record. There's been income reported under Marcus Peterson's SSN since August, a part-time job at Romano's Pizza. But Marcus Peterson doesn't have a Social Security number because he's dead. My blood runs cold. I don't have a job at Romano's Pizza. According to this, Marcus Peterson has been working there 15 hours a week since September 1st. The paychecks are being direct deposited into a joint account with your mother. Mom's face crumbles completely. I needed the money for college expenses. The life insurance payout was delayed, and Northwestern requires a deposit. You've been stealing someone's identity to work illegally. Sarah's voice rises. Mrs. Peterson, whose Social Security number have you been using? It's Dylan's SSN, Mom whispers. I changed the name on the account from Dylan to Marcus. The room starts spinning. She's been using my Social Security number to make fake Marcus work at a pizza place I've never seen, depositing paychecks into an account I don't have access to, all while I've been sitting in calculus class pretending to understand derivatives. Mom, I say slowly, where exactly is Romano's Pizza? Downtown. On State Street. She won't meet my eyes. The manager thinks you're Marcus recovering from a head injury. That's why you seemed different from your application interview. What application interview? Sarah slams her pen down. Mrs. Peterson, did you impersonate your son during a job interview? Dylan was having a difficult day. The Marcus identity was still new, and I thought it would be too stressful for him to. You interviewed for a job as your dead son using your living son's Social Security number. Ms. Rodriguez looks like she's questioning her entire career in education. How is any of this legal? It's not legal, Sarah says grimly. It's identity theft, Social Security fraud, tax evasion, and probably mail fraud if any documents went through the Postal Service. She turns to me with an expression that's half sympathy, half professional horror. Dylan, did you know about the job? I've never been to State Street, I say, but even as I say it, something clicks. Wait. Mom, is that where you've been going on Thursday evenings? You said you were seeing a grief counselor. The job was only temporary. Just until we could access Marcus's college fund. What college fund? My voice is getting higher. Marcus never had a college fund. Mom reaches into her portfolio and pulls out a bank statement. The life insurance money. $50,000 payable to Marcus Peterson, beneficiary of Robert and Linda Peterson's policy on their minor child. Sarah grabs the statement. You took out a life insurance policy on Dylan and then collected it by claiming Dylan was dead? No. Mom protests. The policy was on Marcus. But when Marcus died, Dylan became the beneficiary because he was the surviving child. Then when we made Dylan into Marcus, Marcus became the beneficiary of his own policy. I stare at her. You made me my own brother's life insurance beneficiary by pretending to be him. It's the same money, Mom says desperately. It was always going to be used for college expenses. I just had to adjust the paperwork because of the identity situation. Ms. Rodriguez is typing furiously. Mrs. Peterson, this bank statement shows regular deposits from Romano's Pizza, but also withdrawals for Northwestern University housing deposits, meal plan payments, and something called Freshman Orientation Package, Marcus Peterson, class of 2024. You've been spending my fake job money on fake Marcus's college expenses, I realize. Money I earned with my own Social Security number at a job I never knew I had, going to pay for a dead person's education. Sarah closes her tablet and stands up. This is the most complex case of identity fraud I've encountered in 15 years. Dylan, I'm going to need you to come with me immediately. We have to sort out your legal existence before this gets any worse. How much worse can it get? Well, for starters, if Marcus Peterson fails to show up for his shifts at Romano's this week, they'll probably call your emergency contact to check on his welfare. Sarah consults her notes. According to the employment records, Marcus's emergency contact is listed as Linda Peterson, and his next of kin for insurance purposes is listed as Dylan Peterson of Portland, Oregon. My heart stops. Aunt Rachel. Your mother listed your aunt as Marcus's next of kin using her Portland address. If anything happens to fake Marcus, Romano's Pizza will call your very real Aunt Rachel to inform her that her dead nephew Dylan's dead brother Marcus needs help. I can't breathe. Aunt Rachel thinks I'm dead. If Romano's calls her about Marcus being missing, she'll know something is wrong. It gets worse, Ms. Rodriguez says quietly. Dylan, your Aunt Rachel called the school this morning. The words hit me like a physical blow. Aunt Rachel called. Today. Ms. Rodriguez nods grimly. This morning at 8:47 a.m. She spoke with Mrs. Henderson at the front desk. She was asking about enrollment records for both Dylan and Marcus Peterson. Mom's face goes completely white. What did Mrs. Henderson tell her? That Marcus Peterson is currently enrolled as a senior, but there's no Dylan Peterson in our system. Ms. Rodriguez pulls up what looks like a call log on her computer. Your aunt specifically asked about Dylan's transcripts being transferred here from Jefferson High. She said she'd been trying to reach your family for months about college planning for Dylan. Sarah looks up from her notes. Mrs. Peterson, your sister doesn't know Dylan is supposedly dead. We stopped taking Rachel's calls after the funeral, Mom admits. She was asking too many questions about why Dylan seemed so traumatized, why he looked different, why he'd suddenly started talking about Marcus in present tense. My legs feel weak. Aunt Rachel knew something was wrong. She's been calling Jefferson High too. Ms. Rodriguez continues reading from her screen. Their records show multiple inquiries from Rachel Morrison in Portland asking about Dylan Peterson's final transcripts and college application support. Jefferson told her Dylan transferred out of state in March. So Aunt Rachel thinks I moved to another state, I realize, but she's calling schools in Illinois asking about my transcripts. She knows the stories don't match. Sarah's phone buzzes. She glances at it and frowns. Speaking of your aunt, I have a voicemail from someone named Rachel Morrison. She called DCFS 20 minutes ago reporting suspected fraud involving her nephews Dylan and Marcus Peterson. The room goes completely silent. Mom looks like she might faint. She filed a report. I whisper. Sarah plays the voicemail on speaker. Aunt Rachel's familiar voice fills the office, and hearing it makes my chest tight with hope and terror. This is Rachel Morrison calling about my nephews in Illinois. I think their parents are covering up something serious. Dylan Peterson was supposed to graduate this year, but his school says he transferred. Marcus Peterson died in March, but a different school says he's enrolled there now. Their parents won't return my calls, and I'm worried about Dylan's safety. Someone needs to check on that family immediately. When the voicemail ends, Sarah looks at Mom with something approaching disgust. Your own sister knew this was wrong. Rachel doesn't understand what we've been through, Mom says weakly. She doesn't have children. She doesn't know what it's like to lose everything. She knows what it's like to lose her nephew, I snap. She's been grieving Marcus too, and worrying about me, and you cut her off completely. Ms. Rodriguez's computer chimes with an email notification. She reads it quickly, then looks at Sarah. The Portland Police Department is requesting a welfare check on Dylan Peterson at his parents' residence. They say it's urgent. That's impossible, Mom protests. Portland police don't have jurisdiction here. They do when someone reports a missing person across state lines, Sarah explains. Mrs. Peterson, your sister filed a missing person report for Dylan with Portland PD 3 hours ago. She told them Dylan Peterson was supposed to be attending Jefferson High, but the school has no record of him after March, and his family has been unreachable. My heart is hammering. She thinks I'm missing. Technically, you are missing, Sarah points out. Dylan Peterson disappeared from all official records in March. The only trace of him is a fake death certificate and some forged college applications. The office phone rings, startling everyone. Ms. Rodriguez answers on speaker without thinking. Westfield Prep, this is Ms. Rodriguez. This is Officer Martinez with the Illinois State Police. We're looking for information about a student named Dylan Peterson. We have a report that he may be enrolled at your school under a false identity. I recognize the name immediately. Officer Martinez was the one who came to our door the night Marcus died. He's the one who stood in our living room and explained about the accident while I sat on the couch in shock. Officer Martinez, I say before anyone can stop me, this is Dylan Peterson. I remember you. The silence on the other end of the phone stretches for what feels like an eternity. I can practically hear Officer Martinez processing what I just said, the voice of a kid he thought was dead speaking to him through a guidance counselor's speakerphone. Dylan Peterson, he says slowly. Son, we have a death certificate on file for you dated March 15th. Are you telling me you're alive? Very alive, I manage, my voice shaking. The death certificate is fake. My brother Marcus died that night, not me. Jesus Christ, Officer Martinez breathes. Kid, I was at your house that night. I remember you sitting on the couch when I told your parents about Marcus. You were wearing a Jefferson High basketball shirt. Mom makes a choking sound and reaches for the phone, but Sarah blocks her. Officer Martinez, this is Sarah Chin with DCFS. We have a very complex identity fraud situation here. Can you confirm the details from the night of March 15th? I can do better than that, Martinez replies. I have my incident report right here. Robert and Linda Peterson, 427, Maple Street. Victim, Marcus James Peterson, age 17, pronounced dead at 11:47 p.m. at Northwestern Memorial. Surviving family members present, parents Robert and Linda, younger brother Dylan, age 16. Ms. Rodriguez is frantically typing notes. Officer Martinez, do you remember anything specific about Dylan that night? Kid was in shock, obviously. But yeah, I remember he had this bass guitar in the corner of the living room. Black Fender with band stickers all over it. He kept staring at it while I was talking to his parents. Martinez pauses. Why? What's this about? I look at Mom, whose face has gone completely ashen. My bass guitar. You told Ms. Rodriguez it belonged to Dylan, the dead brother. But Officer Martinez remembers me with it the night Marcus died. The bass guitar is still evidence, I realize suddenly. Officer Martinez, do you have photos from that night? Evidence that Dylan Peterson was alive. Standard procedure for fatality notifications. We document the family present for legal purposes. I can hear him typing. Yeah, I've got photos of the whole family in the living room. Parents, victim's younger brother Dylan, even got a shot of that bass guitar because the kid seemed attached to it. Sarah grabs her tablet. Officer Martinez, can you email those photos to the DCFS office immediately? This case involves extensive identity manipulation and we need contemporary evidence of Dylan's existence. Already sending them. But I gotta ask, how the hell did a living kid end up with a death certificate? Before anyone can answer, Ms. Rodriguez's computer chimes again. We've got more incoming calls, she says, reading her screen. Jefferson High's principal wants to discuss Dylan Peterson's transcript requests. Northwestern University's admissions office is asking about Marcus Peterson's enrollment status. And someone from Romano's Pizza is calling about Marcus Peterson missing his last 3 shifts. Mom's careful house of cards is collapsing in real time, and she seems to realize it. She slumps in her chair, covering her face with her hands. There's something else, she whispers. Dylan, I need to tell you about the insurance investigator. My blood runs cold. What insurance investigator? Mutual Assurance has been asking questions about Marcus's policy. They want to interview the beneficiary, you, as Marcus, about the circumstances of Dylan's death. Mom's voice is barely audible. The appointment is scheduled for Friday. Sarah stops writing entirely. Mrs. Peterson, you scheduled your son to be interviewed about his own death. I thought we could handle it. I prepared answers, coached him on the timeline. You were going to have me lie to insurance investigators about how I died. I stand up so fast my chair rolls backward. Mom, that's insurance fraud on top of everything else. Officer Martinez's voice crackles through the speaker. Folks, I'm 10 minutes out from Westfield Prep. This situation requires immediate law enforcement intervention. The walls feel like they're closing in. In 10 minutes, I'll be face to face with a police officer who knew me before I became Marcus, who has photographic evidence that Dylan Peterson was alive 8 months ago. The same officer who will have to arrest my mother for crimes I'm only beginning to understand the scope of. Mom reaches for my hand across the desk. Sweetheart, I know this looks bad, but everything I did was for you. To give you Marcus's opportunities, his future. I never wanted Marcus's future, I say, pulling away from her. I wanted my own. 3 months later, I'm sitting in Aunt Rachel's living room in Portland, holding a piece of mail addressed to Dylan James Peterson, my real name, printed on an official document for the first time since March. It's my acceptance letter to Portland State University's music production program. I got in on my own merit, with my own grades, using an essay about finding my identity after losing everything that mattered to me. How does it feel? Aunt Rachel asks, settling into the chair across from me with 2 cups of coffee. She's been asking me this question every few days since I moved in with her. How does it feel to be Dylan again? How does it feel to sleep in a room that's actually mine? How does it feel to not have to pretend anymore? Weird, I admit, which is what I always tell her. Good weird, but still weird. The legal restoration of my identity took 2 months and involved more paperwork than I knew existed. Officer Martinez's photos from the night Marcus died became crucial evidence, proving that Dylan Peterson was alive after his alleged death date. The fake death certificate was officially voided, my social security record was corrected, and Marcus Peterson was properly listed as deceased in all relevant systems. Mom was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison for identity theft, social security fraud, and insurance fraud. She'll be eligible for parole in 12 months with good behavior. Dad, who had been mostly passive during the whole nightmare, received probation and mandatory psychological counseling. The judge said she'd never seen a case of grief-induced identity manipulation this extensive, and ordered both my parents to pay restitution for all the forged documents and fraudulent financial transactions. The house on Maple Street was sold to pay the legal fees and restitution costs. Marcus's life insurance money, which had somehow grown to $63,000 through the various fraudulent schemes, was put into a trust fund for my actual college expenses, managed by Aunt Rachel until I turned 21. Romano's Pizza never did call Aunt Rachel about Marcus missing work, but they did file a complaint with the Department of Labor about employee fraud. The manager, Mr. Torino, was surprisingly understanding when Officer Martinez explained the situation. He said Marcus had been a quiet, reliable employee who seemed like he was dealing with some kind of trauma, and he'd suspected something was wrong but hadn't wanted to pry. They sent my final paycheck to Aunt Rachel's address in Portland, made out to Dylan Peterson, $247.83 that I actually earned myself. Northwestern University revoked Marcus's acceptance, obviously, but they also sent a formal letter expressing sympathy for what they called an unprecedented case of familial psychological abuse. The admissions counselor, Dr. Patricia Webb, wrote that if I ever wanted to apply to Northwestern as Dylan Peterson, they would give my application special consideration given the circumstances. I wrote back thanking her, but explaining that I wanted to study music production, not engineering, and that I'd found a program that was perfect for me. Trevor Kim was the hardest part of coming forward. When the story broke at Westfield Prep, he showed up at the police station asking to see me. I was terrified he'd be angry about the deception, but instead he just looked relieved. I knew something was wrong, he told me that day. Marcus would never have quit lacrosse, never would have forgotten Sarah's birthday, never would have been scared of calculus. But I thought maybe the accident had changed him permanently. He paused, studying my face. You look different when you're being yourself instead of trying to be him. We've stayed in touch through social media. He graduated from Westfield in June and is going to Northwestern for engineering, the path Marcus had planned for himself. Sometimes Trevor posts pictures from campus with captions like, thinking of Marcus Peterson today, and I'm grateful that someone remembers my brother as he actually was, not as the person I was forced to become. The bass guitar, my Fender Jazz bass with all the band's stickers, is here in Portland now, leaning against the wall in my new bedroom. Aunt Rachel drove to Illinois personally to retrieve it from my parents' house, along with all of Dylan Peterson's belongings that had been boxed up and stored in the garage. My vintage postcard collection, my Jefferson High yearbooks, my clothes that actually fit my personality instead of Marcus's image. Last week, I played guitar for the first time in 8 months. My fingers were clumsy at first, muscle memory fighting against months of disuse, but the songs came back. I played Black by Pearl Jam, the same song I'd been practicing the night Marcus died, and for the first time since March 15th, I cried for my brother without feeling guilty about being alive. The doorbell rings, interrupting my thoughts. Aunt Rachel gets up to answer it, and I hear familiar voices in the hallway. A moment later, she returns with a middle-aged couple I don't recognize, both carrying flowers and looking nervous. Dylan, Aunt Rachel says gently, these are Marcus's friend's parents. The Chens, Sarah's mom and dad. They wanted to meet the real you. Mrs. Chen steps forward with tears in her eyes. Dylan, Sarah told us everything that happened. We just wanted you to know that we're so sorry for what your parents put you through, and we're glad you're safe now. Mr. Chen nods. Marcus was a good kid, and we mourned him properly when we learned the truth. But we also want you to know that you don't have to carry the weight of being him anymore. You're allowed to just be Dylan. I stand up and shake their hands, feeling lighter than I have in months. Thank you. That means everything. After they leave, I call Officer Martinez in Illinois. He's been checking on me regularly since the case closed, making sure I'm adjusting okay to being myself again. How's Portland treating you, kid? He asks. Good. Really good. I look around Aunt Rachel's living room, decorated with photos of our family from before everything went wrong, pictures that include both Marcus and Dylan as separate, distinct people. Officer Martinez, can I ask you something? That night in March, when you came to tell us about Marcus, do you remember what I said? He's quiet for a moment. You asked me if there was anything you could have done to save him. I told you that some things are just terrible accidents, and surviving doesn't make you responsible for the person who didn't. I never got to thank you for that. Dylan, Officer Martinez says quietly, you don't owe anyone gratitude for letting you exist. Not me, not your parents, not anyone. You have the right to be yourself, and you always did. After we hang up, I pick up my bass guitar and play the opening notes to Alive by Pearl Jam, a song about surviving when someone else didn't, about carrying the weight of being the one who made it through. But tonight, for the first time since March, the weight doesn't feel crushing. My name is Dylan James Peterson. I'm 18 years old, I live in Portland with my Aunt Rachel, and I'm starting college in the fall to study music production. My older brother Marcus died in a car accident 8 months ago, and I miss him every day. But I'm not him, I never was him, and I'm finally okay with being exactly who I've always been. I'm alive, I'm myself, and that's enough.